We are going to go ahead and get started now. Thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. I really appreciate having you all. And I was just looking through the list of participants and seeing some reoccurring names and also some familiar names. And I really appreciate you all joining in this morning. Today we'll be hearing from Bonnie Henderson, and she's going to be speaking about hiking on the Central Oregon coast. And then next week, we'll be hearing about the view from Cascade Head from Bruce Byers. And my name is Tara Du Bois. I am the communications coordinator for the Cape Perpetual Collaborative. And our vision is to foster communication and collaboration within local communities for scientific exchange, management, awareness, and stewardship from the land and the sea in and around the Cape Perpetual Marine Reserve. And our three guiding principles are community engagement, leveraging resources, and engaging in partnerships. And our founding partners include federal agencies, some state agencies, local nonprofits, as well as the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua Indians. We've been around since 2017, and our focus is around the Cape Perpetual Marine Reserve, which is the largest marine reserve in Oregon. And in conjunction with the North and the South Marine Protected Area, there's protected waters stretching between Yachats and Florence. And today's fun fact that I want to share is around the ecological tools. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is the monitoring agency of Oregon's marine reserves, and they use 4 different research tools when conducting research within the marine reserves and their outside spots that they compare them to. And they customize that based on the marine reserve. So for example, for Cape Perpetua, they use 3 out of the 4 techniques, which are hook and line, where they'll do catch and release, and then they'll take measurements, identifications, and such of the fish. ROV, remote operated vehicle, where they can kind of take like a remote operated camera down under the water, and a video lander, where they put down a camera and they stabilize it in one spot and they leave it there for a certain amount of time before they bring it back up. One of the other things that they also do is scuba diving, but within the Cape Perpetual Marine Reserve, it is too deep. It's a very deep marine reserve. And so that is one of the research techniques that they're unable to do at this reserve. But you can learn more about that on our website or the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Reserve Program site. And we also host, the collaborative hosts a variety of community science projects, as you can see here. Some of them are monthly and some of them are seasonal, just depending on the project. We host a Young Scientist webinar series on the 2nd Tuesday of every month through April, October through April. Our next one's coming up on Tuesday. And you can find out information about all of the presentations and the community science events on our website at capeperpetualcollaborative.org. And just click the events tab and that'll take you to the calendar. I also encourage you to connect with us on our Facebook page and it's Cape Perpetual Marine Reserve, and our YouTube channel, which is the Cape Perpetual Collaborative. And that is where we will host the recording of this video, as well as where we have recordings of all of our past presentations that we've hosted since November, actually since going back to August there as well, and we'll continue to build that library. And with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker of the day, Bonnie Henderson. She's an avid hiker and author. Bonnie is an avid hiker, author of 2 guidebooks from Mountaineers Books, Day Hiking, Oregon Coast and Best Hikes with Kids in Oregon. And her 3rd guidebook, Hiking the Oregon Coast Trail, is due out in the fall. She is also the author of 2 critically acclaimed nonfiction books, The Next Tsunami, Living on a Restless Coast, and Strand, An Odyssey of Pacific Ocean Debris. She currently serves as communications coordinator for the North Coast Lake Conservancy based in Seaside, Oregon. And with that, Bonnie, I am going to stop my share and turn it over to you. Should be able to do that now. While Bonnie's pulling up her presentation, I just want to let you know that we will be doing a Q&A at the end. And so if you have any questions throughout Bonnie's presentation, feel free to go ahead and put it in the Q&A section, the Q&A box, and then we will go ahead and answer as many as we can at the end of her presentation. And with that, Bonnie, I will let you take it over. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Oh, you're on mute.
I realized I needed to go out of screen share to get back. Hang on. Okay, I think I'm okay now.
Yes.
Okay.
Good to go.
So thank you very much for inviting me, Tara. I love to talk about hiking, and I really appreciate the Cape Perpetua Collaborative and the work that they're doing to support the Marine Reserve. It's so important. It's really exciting stuff, and it's great to see the whole community coming together to support the Marine Reserves. So this is a part of the, I am on the Oregon coast hiking all the time. I have both just for fun and to update my hiking book, which I will show you here. I live in Eugene, so the closest coast to me is this coast, plus the Oregon dunes. So I'm over here a lot, and I really love this coastline. I am not going to try to tell you every place you can hike on the coast between Waldport and Florence in this presentation. I thought what I'd do instead is talk about two great long beach walks, two great short hikes, and two of my favorite longer hikes. They're kind of spread out, as you can see, between Waldport and Florence. I also want to say, I'm sure that there are people on this call who are more familiar with all or some of these hikes than I am. I hope that you will, if you have updates or if you know of any new hikes, I would love to hear about them, either through my website or put it in the chat. Love to tap your knowledge as well. So I'm going to start with beach hikes. I don't know what you locally call the beach between Waldport and Yachats. I call it Patterson Beach just because it's accessed by and fronted by Governor Patterson Wayside, or a lot of it. The thing about Oregon coast beaches, you realize when you hike the whole Oregon coast, which I have done a couple of times, the beaches vary considerably. From the really wide, hard, flat beaches south of the Columbia River up by south of Astoria to one of the roughest beaches to walk in Oregon is down by Flores Lake, quite a bit south of Bandon. And it just depends on the composition of the sand. These two beaches up here between Waldport and Florence are just two really fabulous beaches for long walking. They're really nice and hard. Patterson Beach, you can get to, excuse me. So you can get on the beach, as you probably know, immediately right at downtown Waldport if the tide is really low. If it's low enough to get around this point, then you can start right here and just, you've got 7 miles of beach to walk all the way down to where Smelt Sands, where Yachats 804 trail picks up and takes you into Smelt Sands recreation site. There are also, the other nice thing about these beaches is there are a lot of other places to get on them. So you can do a much shorter one-way or round trip hike. This beach doesn't have any big creeks you need to cross as far as I know. There might be some small ones, but not a big deal. And you know when you're getting to Smelt Sands, when you see this house, it's the house on the bluff, and Yachats 804 trail starts right here. You've just hiked 7 miles and you've got 8/10 of a mile to get to Smelt Sands. So it's a really nice long one-way hike if you have the means to do that, if you can get a shuttle car. Let me see, I'm going to then talk about the other beach, which is obviously Heceta Beach north of Florence. This is another great, hard, wide beach, fabulous walking. If you start at the northernmost access point and you walk all the way to the North Jetty, the Siuslaw, that's about 6 miles, I think. Let me see, what do my notes say? Yeah, about 6 miles. There's various ways to get on it. And what's great about this beach is it's much more remote. So you can hop on Heceta Beach from the Highway 101 at about milepost 185 up here north of Baker Beach. There's a highway pullout on the west side of the highway, right across from the Southview Housing Development sign, or as I said, my milepost 181. If you look carefully, you pull over and then you'll see a little tiny Oregon Coast Trail sign, and you'll see a little trail running through the Salal, heading down over through the dunes to the beach. Now, what's great about this beach is how remote it is. This is all public land all the way to here. And this is where you'll start seeing houses, but you don't see any houses here at all. There are 2 creeks to cross, and they probably, I'm guessing I think they're crossable in the winter, but you'd have to take off your shoes. They're not something you can just hop across. Berry Creek up here, and then Sutton Creek way down here is where it hits the ocean. So this is a great place to get on the beach if you want to have the longest beach walk. The other place I really like accessing this beach is at the end of the Sutton Campground Road. At the very end of the road, past the campground, is a little day use parking area. You walk a short trail and you get to Sutton Creek, which needs to be crossed. You can either wade it, or often there's a log across it, depending on what's happened in the last high water. Often you can cross it on a log, and then it's a short walk through the dunes. And then again, you have tons of beach between these 2 creeks where you are unlikely to see anybody else, really, especially in the winter. So this is a really lovely remote beach. And of course, North Jetty down here is very accessible and has the extra bonus of not requiring any fee at this point. So that's kind of nice. So let me move on from Heceta Beach now to a couple of very short hikes that I really like. Yachats Gerdeman Botanical Preserve, Yachats Trail and Gerdeman Botanical Preserve make a really nice short loop hike. It's a little over 1.5 miles. And part of what I like about it is I'm a sucker for a boardwalk. I just love hiking on boardwalks. It's like you're walking in a place where you're not really supposed to be, where you're sort of passing through without having any impact. I love the sound of my boots on the boardwalk. This is one of the features of the Gerdeman portion of this hike. So Gerdeman, as you may know, is a private botanical preserve, but they have a trail through it that's open to the public. Here's how you get on it if you're not already familiar with it. So this is just north of Smelt Sands. There's a little road here through a housing area that's called Diversity Drive. You can walk up to the end of it, and as far as I'm aware, there are a few parking spaces up here that are open, that you can use, open to the public. You pick up the trail right there, and this is not an exact GPS track. I have not tracked it. This is sort of my approximation, but it's pretty close. It goes pretty steeply up the highway, up the hillside, switchbacking up, switch back up till it almost reaches the edge of the national forest and actually dips into the forest where it kind of levels off. And then there are a couple of trail junctions. Just kind of stay on the main trail. Avoid going, if you end up going into a neighborhood, back off and get back on the trail. And then the trail through the preserve actually crosses over Mitchell Creek a couple of times. And this is where it gets really pretty. What's great about Gerdeman is it's a combination of, it's a botanical garden of exotic plants living within a native landscape. So it's beautifully chosen and beautifully tended. And I love the combination of these massive Sitka spruce trees with, for example, a big leaf rhododendron at the base of them, which looks like it belongs there. It doesn't, but it just looks perfect. When you get to the bottom of the Gerdeman Trail, which is right here, you go through a little gate, and there's just kind of a dirt path, gravel road that ends up behind Earthworks Gallery. You can follow that on down to the highway, walk along the highway for just 1/10 of a mile and back to Diversity Drive and get back to where you started. For a short hike that's just got a lot of interest, especially if you're willing to do a little bit of uphill, because this is pretty rough right here. Pretty steep is all I mean. This is a great little hike. hope you're keeping mental or actual notes or writing in the chat, because I would love to answer any questions you have about any of these hikes. So my other recommendation for a short hike is China Creek Loop. And this is all in Carl Washburn State Park to the south, on the south side, the north side of Heceta Head. You can kind of get the idea here. I've hiked here with my friends many times. I love this little footbridge over the creek. I just love the forest here. Here's how you get to it. It shares a trailhead with the Hobbit Trail, which I hope you know where that is. I imagine you do. It's just south of the entrance to the campground at Carl Washburn. So rather than going west to Hobbit Beach, head east on the east side of the highway, and it drops down the hillside and then just walks along an almost level trail through a very pretty forest. It's a really nice new bridge over, newish, over Blowout Creek, and then more pretty much level hiking through the woods until you get to a junction here. Take a right, and this is the really great part of this hike. You head up the hill a bit, not too steeply, and then back down to the creek that you just saw in the previous picture. And I don't really know if this has been logged before. If it was logged, it was a long time ago, because there are a lot of really big trees. It doesn't have the feel of a new second growth forest. It has the feel of an old forest. So it is oldish, if not old growth. And it's just lovely, very airy, very open understory, a beautiful, beautiful bunch of woods right here. Continue around till you get to a junction, a trail junction here, hang a left, and you're back at your original junction and head back the way you came for. That's about a 3-mile loop. If you want a pretty easy loop with a lot of interest. One of the things I really like about this trail, I love hiking here in the fall because the mushrooms are fabulous. This is just one of the many amazing mushrooms you will find once the rains have started. It's a lovely, lovely forest. So I'm going to give you now my top 2 picks for longer hikes on this part of the coast. And one is just an extension of the hike I just described. But this brings in some beach walking and gives you options for extending further to the north and south. Again, I've been here many times with my friends. We love this hike. You just start like you did on the previous hike. Start at Hobbit Beach Trailhead, follow it around, follow this beautiful little loop. And then when you get back here, instead of going left, go right, follow a path north. It hits Washburn Campground. Walk right through the campground to the very northern end of the campground. There's a trail there that you pick up. It ducks under the highway and follows along the creek for a little ways until it pops out of the beach right here. This is Ponsler Wayside, so it comes out right there. If you wanted to start at Ponsler Wayside, you could do that instead. So once it hits the beach, you walk south, I forget how many miles, maybe a couple of miles on the beach, almost to the foot of Heceta Head, and you take the Hobbit Trail back to where you started. And if you're not familiar with this trail, it's pretty easy to find. As you start to approach the cliffs here at Heceta Head, look for there's a yellow beach access sign. I actually forget what the number is right now. It is the only one down there. Will help you find where the Hobbit Trail starts. So this is actually a 5.5-mile loop, not super long, but you can extend it a couple of different ways. One is you can go north on the beach from here. This time of year, maybe not so much. There's 3 creeks to cross until you hit Rocky Knoll, which is where the beach stops a mile to the north. You'd have to cross China Creek, then you'd cross Big Creek, which is kind of big in the winter, and then Rocky Creek. And I don't know if any of those are creeks that you would want to cross in the winter at high water. They're easy to do in the summer. But this time of year, you probably don't want to be doing that. You could go a little ways north. But the other option is to go south from here. Once you've taken the Hobbit Beach Trail back and you're about to cross the highway to get back where you started, instead hang a right and follow the trail 1.5 miles up to the Heceta Head Lighthouse, which obviously is another nice, one of the classic destinations on the Oregon coast, Central Oregon coast. So you can do that. And if you combine that with that loop, then you'd have a little bit more than 8 miles. That's a pretty good day hike for most of us. This is an Oregon Coast Trail backpacker I met on the trail a couple of years ago. And then I saved the best for last as far as I'm concerned. I really love this trail, the Gwin Creek Cooks Ridge Loop. What I like about this trail is it's a beautiful old growth forest, and it's all trail. It's not trail. It's not logging road that's been converted to trail. Sometimes on the former logging roads, you get a feeling of a wall of trees on either side. And instead, on this trail, the entire time you're in a footpath that winds through, and you're right inside the forest. You can see through the into the forest a long ways. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous forest. And I'll show you the map, which helps explain the other things I like about it. I like to start here at the highway pull-off that's just north of Neptune Beach. I don't think it's really signed. It doesn't really have a name, but it's easy to find. It's big and wide and has tons of parking. You cross the highway, pick up the little trail that sort of runs east, and then go left to cross Gwin Creek. Then you go right and you follow, as you can see, Gwin Creek for more than 2 miles, I think, upstream. So what's really cool is you're in the forest, you can see the creek, you can hear the creek for miles, and that just makes for a wonderful experience. When you get to the top, move my thing. You get not to the top, you get to a certain point where there's this switchback left, and that's the beginning of the one steeper part of the trail. You head up this up and up and up, but it's not very far to get to the top of Cook's Ridge, and there's a trail junction there too. And from here on, it's not all downhill, but it's just this lovely rolling along the ridge line, and then eventually dropping down. As you start to get kind of close to the visitor center, you'll hit a trail junction. You can go either way. I'm just drew it going to the right. I'm going to move my thing so I can see. And then you drop down to the visitor center parking area. The visitor center is right here. To return to your car, you pick up the asphalt path that leads just right outside the visitor center. Follow it down, it crosses the access road. And then this is a section of Oregon Coast Trail that just rolls along the highway, pretty much back to where you started. I like this trail so much that I don't know that much. I'm really out of date on the other trails in Cape Perpetua Scenic Area, because whenever we want to go hiking at the coast, we always do this one. In fact, I was showing my husband this PowerPoint last night to do a trial run. And he said, yeah, let's go hiking on Sunday. Let's go to the coast to go hiking. I'm like, what would be really cool would be maybe we could go up the Cummins Creek Trail. I haven't been there for a long time. And he's like, yeah, let's just do Gwin Creek because I always end up there. So I'll give you more specifics on that. This is a wider view of that trail. Here's the trail I was just talking about. But there's so many great trails in Cape Perpetua Scenic Area. Just south of Gwin Creek is the Cummins Creek Trail. It's like a lollipop type of loop. And it's more like an 8-mile round trip, I think. I could be wrong on that. It's a little bit longer than this loop. And of course, you can also hike the Cummins Ridge Trail in Cummins Creek Wilderness, which is just outside the scenic area. A little bit of advice about hiking that trail is the first 3.7, the lower 3.7 miles of this trail are former logging road. So it's not as pretty. The prettiest part of the trail is the upper trail portion, which is actually built as a footpath. So you can't see it on this map, but there is a road that goes all the way to the top trailhead. And the only way I've hiked this trail was I got a ride to the upper trailhead and hiked it as a 6-mile one-way hike out, which is really heavenly. It's a very slow ascent down that ridge. And the best part of it is at the top. So if you can swing that, if you can get a ride to the top and or a shuttle back up to get your car later, that's just a lovely way to do an excellent hike here just south of Cape Perpetua Scenic Area. The other one I should mention, it's not this wonderful, neat loop like the Gwin Creek Cooks Ridge loop is, but Amanda's Trail is a lovely trail that starts just south of Yachats. It goes up to the top of Cape Perpetua, and then you can take the St. Perpetua Trail down, pretty steep down to the visitor center. And again, this is a really nice one to do as a one-way hike with a shuttle. There's not great parking at the top. At the bottom of, there's none right at the bottom of Amanda's. There is on a nearby access road that the trail crosses. Of course, there's great parking at the top, but that's the best way, I think, to do this hike, is to start at the bottom of Amanda's and then end up down at the bottom of St. Perpetua Trail and at the visitor center. And as I mentioned, you can get details on these in my book or online, lots of different places. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop, and I'm hoping that people have questions. Let me show you first. These are my books because I'm obliged to share them. And this is the book I'm really excited about and would love to talk to anybody about hiking the Oregon Coast Trail if you're interested. I've hiked it more or less twice the entire distance, and many parts of it multiple times. Backpacking it, I've done it all backpacking camping. I've done it partially end to end. I just think it's really one of the great trails of the world, and is just barely known by Oregonians. I was there 2 years ago. I hiked it and met almost no Oregonians hiking the whole thing, but I met people from all around the US, Germany, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Ireland, and other places who had come to the Oregon coast to hike this trail. And yet it's really not very well known and not used that much. So it's a great trail. Love to talk to you about it if we have time. And maybe I will open it up to questions. And Tara, should I stop sharing my screen at this point?
Oh, you can leave it up. That's fine.
Okay.
That way they
All
can
right.
kind of see the books as you're talking.
Okay.
And we do have some questions rolling in, and I always like to start with one around what kind of inspired you to kind of what created your love of hiking and your passion and inspiration behind, you know, loving it so much that you even decided to become an author around it. What was that kind of aha moment for you?
It's probably a long story, but I was raised with a hiking father, and we always went on hikes. To a fault, it was sometimes too much, too long, and too hard. He was a pretty intense hiker, but I came back to it as an adult, and you know, like many people who hike, I found that I not only enjoy it, but it really is. It's one of the best things for your mental health, as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the things that's been really fun, I have to say, is my husband likes to stay in shape, going to the gym, and of course gyms are closed now, and now we do so much more hiking together. That's all we do. We just hike, and for exercise, I mean. And it's I think also I've always just loved the Oregon coast. I don't know why. I'm not really fond of the desert. I like the mountains okay, but the coast is, you can go there any time of year. Really, one of the things I didn't mention about Gwin Creek is it's just as good in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just don't go during a sou'wester, because the tree might fall down on you, but otherwise it's great enough.
That's true. I was just talking about that with somebody else yesterday when we were on the top, up at the top of Cape Perpetua. Like, this is where you don't want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I did not, as a younger person, I have been out like, this is super fun, the wind's blowing and it's so fun and dramatic, and I now realized that was actually super dumb.
The
but
hikes
yeah, I'm
you
not
mentioned,
sure.
yeah, the hikes you mentioned are all just amazing and gorgeous, and I love them for all the same reasons. All right, so I'll start getting to some participant questions now. You've got quite a few. First one, for beach hikes, could you address seasonality?
Well, one of the things I'll say is, if you're not aware of it, in the summer at least, the winds on the Oregon coast prevail from the north-northwest. So you kind of always want to be hiking north to south. Now, that's not necessarily true in the winter when we have sou'westers, and sometimes it's but those tend to be passing. The prevailing winds are from the north, so I'm always thinking about, unless it's stormy, which I'm usually not hiking then, hiking north to south. You do have to think about water levels. I mean, you have to think about tide a little bit. These are really wide beaches. Unless you're hiking right at high tide, it's usually not an issue. But we're about to hit another king tides stretch. So you don't want to be on the beach then, at least not within an hour or so of high tide. So that's a little bit something to think about. People do talk about sneaker waves a lot. I think it's not really a well understood concept. Sneaker waves are specifically a winter kind of phenomenon, and they were not very well known until recently. So you do always want to be looking out for sneaker waves more in the winter than the summer. But as I mentioned on the trail north of China Creek, and also a couple of trails on the Hasita Beach Trail, there are pretty good sized creeks there. And just hike from between the creeks. The ones on Hasita Beach, I don't think really are high enough you could wade them in the winter if you want to. But generally they're fine in the summer, but you do have to think about creek level in the winter. I know somebody who had a bad experience at Big Creek, for example, trying to wade it, and lost her footing and got swept out, and fortunately got pulled back in. So that's something you do have to be aware of, definitely.
And do you know which of these hikes allow dogs?
Oh, that's a good question. Both of the beach hikes are fine with dogs. The only thing you have to worry about on the Oregon coast with dogs is plover nesting areas. And most of those are to the south, in Oregon Dunes and south, although there are a couple on the north coast. But I don't think there are any on the central coast, where dogs are not allowed from mid-March to mid-September. So the beach is fine, and all of these hikes allow dogs. I think they want you to have them on leash in the state park. So the China Creek is in a state park, and I'm not sure what the rules are in the national forest, but it's a little bit looser usually. So they're all fine with dogs. Obviously, you want to have them under your control.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
Are the maps that you were showing in your existing books?
A different version are. So those are maps I made using a program I use called Gaia GPS. I'm just going to do a little plug for Gaia. I love Gaia GPS. I use the professional version, which costs $35 a year, I think. You can get it for free, and it has a lot of trails on it, and you can track your own, make your own routes, or follow other people's routes. So that's an option, is using GPS with your phone. But yeah, those all of those, there are maps like that in my book. And then also, I think that the Cape Perpetua, is the visitor center open at all, or is it entirely closed right now?
It's entirely closed, but they do often, I've seen when I've been there, have a little kind of container where they've got maps.
Right, and they also have stuff posted on
like a board, so they should still be accessible, and they are available online as well.
Right. Yeah.
So check it out even before you go prepared.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the other part of that question was, are dogs on leash allowed in State Park and Botanical Preserve? And yes, with dog on a leash, they would be allowed.
Great. I did not know that. That's great.
And then how long is the Oregon Coast Trail?
Okay, well, it kind of depends on how you do it. It's about 400 miles long. There are a few big bays that you can usually get a ride across in a boat, which is the best way to do it. Tillamook Bay, Coos Bay, Winchester, the mouth of the Umpqua at Winchester Bay. You can get an outfitter or just hitch a ride with a recreational boater, and that will cut the total distance down a little bit, because you're not having to hike or take a bus or something around a big bay. But it's around 400 miles. It takes because there are limitations about where you can camp, and obviously you can't, there's not a motel everywhere. So you kind of have to count on hiking an average of 15 miles a day or so, at least. I mean, less in some places, but that's a good average. So it ends up taking a little less than a month unless you're doing layovers. That gives you an
It's
idea.
really fun when I'm out there doing different things, running into people hiking on the Oregon Coast Trail, all packed up and everything, and
Oh,
hearing
cool.
stories and
Cool.
adventures. I love that. I love running into folks doing that.
Yeah, it's really taken off in the last, I would say, 3 years. I mean, literally, nobody did it, and now it's just really happening.
Yeah. And then what was the name of the wayside to start at for Gwynn Creek Trail again? And I think you had mentioned this. It is Neptune, but it's Neptune North is how locals I hear refer to it. But like she said, it's not signed really. So if you're heading south and you hit Neptune State Park, and you see that it has a bathroom, you've gone too far, just a little bit too far. And if you're heading, it's past the visitor center and past where a lot of folks turn off to look at Thor's Well. There's a pull off on the side of the road. It's just past that. And it is a nice little parking lot, and you just have to be careful when you cross the highway, but it's a favorite trail of mine too that I absolutely love. And that can connect up to a variety of other trails, but we refer to it as Neptune North, but it is not signed. But again, if you hit the one that is signed Neptune, just head back north again, just a tad bit, and you'll find it.
That's perfect.
Okay, remind hikers on the beach to be aware of tide levels and sneaker waves. Never turn your back on the ocean. Very good reminder, Jean. Thank you for that. And yes, Bonnie, I think you addressed that too in a previous question. Do be aware of tide levels before you go out. And seasonality, winter tides are higher and more during the day. Okay, when will the Hiking on the Oregon Coast Trail book be available?
Next fall. September or October, I'm not sure.
And then is there a list that folks could join and get a reminder of when it's published?
You know, I'm not that organized, sadly. I do have a website that right now, it's called hikingtheoregoncoast. I think it's hikingtheoct.com. And it's organized as a blog right now. I've been doing it for several years, sort of updating it every so often. When I hear about new things, I usually post a kind of an update every spring of what I know has changed. I'm going to be redoing that hopefully within a month, and to make it a more sort of user-friendly website with information about hiking the trail, and where I'll also be able to post updates when new trail sections are added, mostly, which is the best thing because it keeps getting improved. Mm-hmm. So you could watch that. I will definitely announce it on there, but it'll be available in the fall.
And I went ahead and put that link in the chat box for everybody if you want to copy that for future too.
Thanks, Tara.
And then the next question, I was wondering if there were any good parking areas along the coast trail for overnight parking if one were to section the hike, mainly for the areas that are along beach hiking.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I had done a lot of research on that for this book. Technically, a lot of towns don't allow overnight parking on the streets. Many of them don't care. They don't have police worrying about that. Overnight parking is not allowed in the state parks, except a little known fact is that you can arrange for overnight parking by calling the park. So that's usually your best bet. They may tell you where, they may not let you park where you want to park. They'll tell you where you can park, but you need to call them ahead, and don't call the reservations number. Go online and look for the number directly to the park, to the little park kiosk, and tell them what you're looking for is an overnight parking permit. As far as the beach sections, the longest beach section is from Florence south. And you can park with a federal permit with either like a senior pass or a U.S. Forest Service pass in the dunes and leave your car there. So that's pretty easy. Yeah, but it's tricky everywhere. And that's one of the things I'm putting in the book is like, here's what I know about how you can park. I've divided up into 5 sections and like, here's how you can park at either end.
Mm-hmm.
It is tricky. I mean, it's one of the funny things about the Oregon Coast Trail is it's being heavily promoted. State Parks is promoting it. Oregon Coast Visitor Center is promoting it, but they mostly think of it as a thing that day users would like to use, and that makes no sense to me because anytime you're hiking on the beach, walking the beach in Oregon, you're pretty much on the Oregon Coast Trail. So it's not a new concept for day hikers. The new concept is how do you string it all together in a multi-day backpack trip? And unfortunately, there are places, there are gaps in where you can legally camp. There are gaps in where you can park. And it would be really helpful if they would tackle those things for those people that they're trying to attract.
Yeah, and I saw a note come through in the chat here that for the Oregon Dunes day use area, there is no overuse parking. So when it says day use, keep that in mind that it is day use only. So, but there are many agencies involved up and down the coast. So you really do have to check it out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can park at the South Jetty in south of Florence.
Yeah.
And leave your car there if you want it. It's kind of remote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the Coos Lake Trail at Wax Myrtle and Drift Creek Wilderness, do you know of trail sections with backcountry campsites for backpacking?
No, what are the ones that they mentioned? Wax Myrtle?
Yeah, Coos Lake Trail and Wax Myrtle and Drift Creek Wilderness.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about Coos Lake Trail. I don't know about that at Wax Myrtle. You know, for backpacking, for primitive camping, really the dunes are your best bet. There are limitations where you can camp mostly by due to plover nesting sites. But those are mostly right on the beach and just to the foredune. So there's a lot of places you can camp in the Oregon dunes, and there's really great places. There's a really cool oxbow on the Talkenitch Creek. That's just if you've hiked the Oregon dunes day use area loop, you know that oxbow. It's a great place to camp in the summer. And the north end of 3 Mile Lake, fabulous camping, really great. So in the dunes, there are really nice places to camp. I'm not real fond of beach camping myself. I think a lot of people assume that hiking the Oregon Coast Trail means camping on the beach every night. Actually, much of the coast, it's not legal. If it's adjacent to a state park or a city, you can't. Plus, it's not that fun. Sand gets into everything. If it's rainy, oh, it's gross. So I love that they have all these hiker biker camps where you can, for a small fee, camp on not sand.
Yeah. And then this is a great question. Do you run into very much wildlife animals, good as well as frightening?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's go through them. First of all, cougars. Yeah, there are probably cougars around. In history, one person has only ever been killed by a cougar in Oregon, and that was a couple of years ago on Mount Hood. Nobody's ever been killed by a cougar on the Oregon coast. I'm really not worried about cougars. If you're worried about them, read up about how, make yourself big, walk away. I've never seen one. I have several times seen black bears on the Oregon coast while I've been out. They always ran away from me, even the mothers with cubs. If they want your food, that might be different. And I know we're supposed to be very cautious around sows with cubs, but they tend to be, they're small. They're my size, literally. A female black bear is my weight, and they're small. They're very shy, and you'd be lucky if you spotted one. Elk, you really have to be careful of it. You may run into elk, which is really cool, and they're great to see at a distance, but too many people want to walk up close and get a picture, and it's a really bad idea, especially if they have their young around, and they will be fiercely protective. So definitely keep your distance from elk and enjoy them at a distance. The worst critters for an Oregon Coast Trail hiker are the raccoons and the jays. They know where the food is. It's in the campsites and the campgrounds, and they'll they're relentless. So
Yeah.
one of the cool things at the hiker biker camps, which are set up in all the state parks and a few other places where you don't need a reservation, they're on a drop-in basis, they're very cheap. It's sort of a group camp area. And most of them now, maybe eventually all of them, have these little lockers that you can use. If you have a lock with you, you can lock it, but really the value of it is being able to stuff your food in it and put it, and then you just don't get bothered. So that's the real critter problem on the Oregon coast is for a hiker is annoying rodents.
Okay, let's see. Are there any new hikes that are in development in the Cape Perpetua area, trail being built?
If anybody knows them, I would love to know about them.
I'm not aware of any on my
yeah.
end.
Yeah, I haven't
but
heard of any.
I'm not an expert either in them,
Yeah.
where they're getting built.
Yeah. Let me think of what I know. You know, eventually, I don't know what the status of Brian Booth State Park, just at the north end of Newport. The big plan there is to build a big campground, and that's been stopped for a while. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I think eventually there'll be more trails there. And this isn't the question you asked, but I'll just mention that there is a process going on right now called the Oregon Coast Trail Action Plan, where the state parks is actively investigating the entire trail and looking at where there are gaps and where they need to build new trail and figure out how could that be done, maybe with an easement, maybe buying some property. That, unfortunately, like many things with state parks, is I don't know that it's on hold, but the person who was in charge of it lost her job and is now working somewhere else. You know, state parks has run out of money, and so that has been really slowed down. But I imagine it'll be picked up eventually. But that's the goal. So new little stretches are being added all the time.
Yeah, that's the same as I've heard from they're just finishing the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any good places for overnight parking? Are any of today's hike area open for camping? I think you might have addressed that in an earlier question.
Yeah, so if I was hiking along this stretch of the coast, I would camp at Beachside State and have camped at Beachside State Park just south of Waldport, or Cape Perpetua campground. It's a great little campground. They have sort of a little hiker biker area. They always find a room for people who are passing through. And then there's kind of a big gap. You can camp on parts of Hasita Beach. You just have to know about the plover regulations. And then get down into Florence, and there's a couple places to park there that are camped there that are developed. But it's enough of a developed coastline that it's not great for undeveloped camping.
And then I have a few updates here regarding dogs in the Gerdeman Botanical Preserve in Yachats. I had mentioned earlier that they are allowed on a leash, but they are not allowed in that particular part of hiking. So they are not allowed within the Gerdeman Botanical Preserve.
Okay, so great to know.
An update for everybody. Fix my misstep there. They are allowed on a leash, like when you're on a beach and on other park trails, but not within the Gerdeman Botanical Preserve. Thank you, everybody who confirmed that.
Thank you.
Lots of locals jumped in there. I appreciate that.
Good. I'm going to make a note of that myself.
And then it looks here, like another local said, you can also pick up some trail maps outside the Yachats Visitor Center's new location at the northeast corner of the Yachats Commons building. So that is also another area where you can pick up some maps. Thank you for that, Jean. Here is this one, FYI, since the Yahike Trail connects with the Yachats 804 Trail, the two can be done together. You can see the Yachats 804 trail hike, and then it says, note, however, the dogs are not permitted in the Botanical Preserve. So that hike can be connected with others as well.
I'm going to back up just so that I can know more about that. I would love to. So here's the 804 trail, and how would you get from Gerdeman to the 804 trail?
So what I have seen people do is kind of like where the Overleaf and Fireside are, just you kind of take that there and cross over.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
you can
just go
pick it up on the
straight
other
over
side.
and then
Yep.
you can just get straight through. Cool.
Yep. Yep. There may be other ways too that are connected, but that's how I've seen it and heard it and done it myself.
That makes
in the
sense.
past. They just kind of cross the road there.
Yeah.
Is there an Oregon Coast Trails Association?
Well, that's an interesting question. Not really. The Oregon Coast Visitor Center has sort of made itself that, but it's, that's a tourist promotion organization. It's really not a Friends of the Oregon Coast Trail. There isn't. I think there's something people are trying to start called the Oregon Coast Trail Foundation, but that's, I think it's more of a way to raise money to get funds to improve the park. And it's not so much like the Cape Perpetual Collaborative, but really more of a, well, it's not entirely grassroots, but really community driven. I don't see that. I think a lot of us would like to see that. Nobody's stepped forward to make it happen yet. I'll tell you one thing that is pretty cool. This is the other organization that is sort of playing that role. Are you aware of Trail Keepers of Oregon? So it's fairly new, but they have really taken on that role in a way. Oregon Coast Visitors Association is funding 2 full-time, I think, Oregon people, trail keepers, one for the south half of the Oregon Coast Trail, one for the north half. So Trail Keepers is kind of playing that role, although their focus very much is on trail building and on engaging volunteers to help with trail building. But that's kind of the closest thing we have right now.
Are the trails rated for difficulty in your books or elsewhere?
They are. Yeah. And
very good.
It's subjective,
Yeah.
It's so subjective, but yeah, I try to do that.
Yeah. And then the next question is about a copy of the presentation being available. Yes, this is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel by Tuesday. Tuesday, you'll also get an email reminder with that link if you want to share it or rewatch it or refer to it in the future when you're ready to go hiking. Do you do guide trips on the coast?
Do I do guided trips?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've thought about doing that, but I don't. Yeah, I just like going out by myself and hiking. But I've thought about doing that. I thought that would be fun to do, like through it as an Airbnb experience or something, but I haven't done that. Yeah.
Maybe that's the next step, huh?
Maybe it is. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing here's a quick guided thing. If you're interested, I do work for North Coast Land Conservancy, not lake, but land, and it's up on the North Coast. And we do a fundraiser every year in the fall called Coast Walk Oregon. And every year we take 30 miles of the Oregon Coast Trail and lead people on 3 consecutive day hikes. Really fun. It's been a great fundraiser. People have a blast. We take 90 people and it fills up in about 24 hours.
What a great idea.
You can check it out at coastwalkoregon.org. We had to cancel last year, like everything got canceled, but this next year, what we're doing is, in the past, we've used buses to shuttle people back so that there are always these one-way hikes. You don't have to do a out and back. We are doing 3 loop hikes this year so that everybody has to drive to the start point so that we don't have to put anybody on buses. And figuring out how to do it staggered start so there's no gathering.
Right.
Just hopefully life will be a little more normal in the fall, but we're prepared for that. So check out coastwalkoregon.org. It's a really fun time.
Very cool. I also added that in the chat link for anybody who wants that. And then just somebody here mentioning wonderful presentation. They're new to the Oregon coast and have lived 6 months in Yachats. So probably really great information to them. Welcome to Yachats, and hope you can do some of these hikes and really kind of get immersed in some nature. Let's see here. This one says C2C goes all the way to Beaver Creek. Trail is open already. Private group has constructed the trail.
This is the C2C is the trail from Newport to Corvallis.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not hiked that. I just love that that's been in development. It's just super cool.
Goes to Beaver Creek, huh? Very cool.
Yeah, cool.
That.
Would you put in the chat, is there information, is there a website and there must be, that's sort of dedicated to the C2C?
Not that they shared, but
Okay, anyway, I think there might be a website. It'd be worth looking because that's just a great concept.
yeah, so just do an internet search for, what is it, Corvallis to Coast? Is that what it's called? And you probably can find that website where you can get more information.
Yeah.
Okay, this is funny. This one says, what's a plugger? But I think what they're referring to is what's a plover.
Oh, okay. So that's a good point. I just kind of breezed past that. There is a small seabird called the Western Snowy Plover that was federally listed as a threatened species. It nests right on the open sand in the vicinity of sand dunes, and its numbers really dropped. It was right, I don't know about edge of extinction, but the numbers had really dropped along the Oregon coast because we've destroyed its habitat. European beachgrass planting is part of it. Part of it is just, all the development. And so the cool thing is that several years ago, U.S. Fish and Wildlife and other agencies started working on, they put a lot of restrictions on the beach and protecting the bird, and their numbers have jumped quite a bit. So it's great. But that does mean that there are portions of the Oregon coast where you can't have a dog at all, even on leash, from March 15th to September 15th, where you're not supposed to fly a kite. Just really trying to protect those plovers and get their numbers back up. You probably won't see them. They're sort of solitary birds. In the winter, you see those flocks of little sanderlings right at the shoreline. They're just beautiful to watch. It's sort of about that size of a bird, but they're not in flocks. They're by themselves, and they're cool little birds. They're fun to read about and maybe spot. But that's the Western Snowy Plover, and it definitely puts some limitations on hiking from March 15th to September 15th while it's nesting.
And usually those areas are very well signed, too, is what I've noticed. So if you see something like that, that's what that means.
Yeah.
And then here is another, looks like tip. Tilican Beach is open near Yachats for overnight camping. Cape Perpetua is currently closed for overnight camping.
Cool.
Just for those who want to know that. And then here it says it's a comment regarding sneaker waves that the word can be deceptive, but it can and often is a bigger title. So you just really want to keep your eyes on the ocean and just watch for those waves coming, because every now and then a bigger one will come in even further. And kind of that's what we're referring to, is just really knowing where you're at, know your route out. I always tell people when you're going on the beach or a rocky area particularly. And then thank you to everybody who posted the link to the C2C trail for me. I went ahead and shared that in the chat as well for everybody. It's c2ctrail.org. Really appreciate this audience and you, Bonnie, very interactive. So many great tips from everybody. Really looking forward to your book. And I think I saw one more question here. Let me check something in the chat here. Oh, I think it was about what is the estimated reading level of Strand and Tsunami? Could a middle schooler read those books?
That's really interesting. I mean, obviously they're written for an adult audience, but I do think that Strand, I think they both could be, but I think a middle school teacher would be the one to judge that. I wasn't really looking at readability scores when I wrote them, but they're not scientific literature.
Yeah. So it probably depends on the interest of the middle schooler, I would imagine too.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
thanks for asking.
Yeah. And then other comments. Thank you. This was great. They look forward to your book release. Wonderful, informative book talk. And then somebody else mentioned that if there are people interested in organizing group hikes, they had started a Facebook group for getting people together.
Cool.
And so there's that. You might want to do some searching on that if you want to connect with people. And I think that is it. Super cool presentation, learned a lot. And then I'm not sure what this is. It is called Juniper Outdoor Club. I don't know what that's referring to quite. but it sounds cool. But otherwise, it looks okay. It looks like we have one more question pop up. Connect yachtstrails.org for the, yes. If you're in the Yachats area specifically, yachtstrails.org, I put that in the chat as well, as a great resource for local hikes. So if you're coming to this area specifically, that is a great resource. Okay.
Cool. Hey, let me say two more things.
Yeah.
Just one is I'm so bad at social media, but I do have an Instagram account, so you can find me at hiking the OCT. And I obviously will be announcing there when the book's out. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's kind of a list. And I just want to thank everybody for coming and for asking the questions you've asked and sharing information. It's great to know a lot of good tips, and I appreciate knowing it. So thanks really a lot for coming and for taking part in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bonnie, so much. Hope you all have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.